Kent has had enough talk about the Chargers jerseys. He said we need to quit talking about the Chargers.
People comparing us to only weird games now. We gotta turn the show on.
It's a compliment.
There's one person, not people. Person.
If you've checked social media, you would think the Chiefs lost. They're 10-1. They're in first place in the AFC. They've been Super Bowl champions for 652 days, but that doesn't mean there's not some stuff to talk about. Let's get into this Panthers game.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our tremendous partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. I am here with my usual partner, Matthew Lane, who was in Teppertown enjoying a Chiefs-Panthers game. How was your experience out there, Matthew?
I had a great time. The weather was fantastic. We got sunshine, mid-60s. You could have gone long sleeve, shorts, pants. It was a good time. We were up. There's a lot of Chiefs fans, whole lot of Chiefs fans in the stadium. It was, traffic leaving was pretty rough, but getting into the stadium wasn't too bad. You get a nice little walk. The tailgating is a little different. For any of those that haven't gone to a downtown football stadium, you don't have just like one giant tailgate in a parking lot. You have a bunch of small little offshoots. So it's a little different from that aspect, but it was a good time. We had a good time. I sat, up in the nosebleeds, a lot of Chiefs fans around me. And then as always, I found my counterparts of the rival fan base. I found two Panthers fans that, we hung out and gave each other shots the entire time, figuratively and literally, apparently, and had a great time going back and forth about the Chiefs and Panthers until the Chiefs ultimately came out on top.
Do you recall being in the chat for the post?
Yeah, I was stuck in a parking garage trying to leave, literally with my car in park in the line to leave a parking garage for about an hour. And I was just in the chat. And you think I was drunk? No, I was just hitting the wrong button on my phone because apparently you can't hit return on your phone keyboard on YouTube to go down. Every time you hit return, it just sends the message. So I was fine. I was just stuck in a parking garage.
iPhone problems, sounds like to me, but
yeah. Oh man, darn the iPhone. Let me tell you.
Well, thanks to everybody hanging out with us today. Appreciate you. I'm excited to get some takes from Maddie, even though I've heard a lot of stuff from him over the last 24 hours, but we'll get them out on the air. We will start though with, I think one of the positive signs for, this team moving forward, and we're going to forget about this. We're going to forget about this Panthers game very quickly. I'm sure of it, and I'm sure as the dust is cleared and, you realize that the Chiefs actually won this football game and they're 10-1, and there's been some horrendous, embarrassing, pathetic losses from teams like the Baltimore Ravens. Even the Bills losing by a bajillion to the Baltimore Ravens. There's some bad losses on the ledger there for a lot of teams. The Chiefs still do not have one of those bad losses on their ledger. They've taken care of business. And I think the thing that the most positive takeaway and the thing I'm most excited about is I think the offense has looked really good since DeAndre Hopkins has come into play, and Patrick Mahomes looks a lot better since DeAndre Hopkins has come in and kind of helped this thing out. So, Maddie, I think that's really where I want to start. Is I walked away, going back and looking at this game, man, comfortable, confident. It's not a good defense, but Mahomes was taking care of business, at all levels of the field, doing a lot of good stuff in that game. Not really a ton to be too upset about or too nitpicky about that game.
No, offensively, and we'll touch on some of the struggles offensively before we get to the defense later on. But offensively, they look good, and the Panthers' defense is one of the least talented groups in the NFL. So you got to take a little bit of this with a grain of salt. But to your point, we talked about it in the past couple game previews. Since the Chiefs have traded for DeAndre Hopkins, they have quietly become a very clear-cut top 10, fringe top 5 offense in the NFL. And that's even still without being able to hit any explosive plays. That's still with kind of losing turnover battles. And I don't want to say on fluky plays, but, losing some unfortunate, unlucky-ish turnovers and stuff like that. So the offense is steadily improving. They're still really good on third downs. They're still really good in these high leverage situations. And I think you see week after week now, we're starting to build multiple games of everything besides the deep ball, which we will talk about. Everything besides the deep ball is starting to really come together for Mahomes. He's throwing the ball a lot better than he was earlier in the year. He's not waiting for guys to come wide open. He doesn't look like every throw is kind of like a touch pass that he's trying to place perfectly into someone's hands. He's throwing, as we always say, he's throwing with his chest. He's throwing confidently. He is out there. He's letting the ball rip as Hopkins is coming out of his break. There's a deep dig where Juju Smith, it doesn't count because there's offsetting penalties, but there's a dig route where Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't really have a ton of separation, but he still fires the ball in there and sticks it on his chest into relatively tight coverage. And so it's just seeing stuff like that. You start to feel really good about when this team needs this offense, they can still show up, right? They still have that gear. We talked about it last week with that going down 9, going down and leading a touchdown drive. You see the next level here as they kind of kept that level of play through the majority of a game. So I think the offense just is trending the right way for the most part over the past month and a half.
Yeah, and I think, and it's I think it's I think I said this in the post game too. Like, I think it's hard for us as, people on the outside looking into, a part of the experience of being a fan is being reactionary, but like seeing the slow build of this thing, knowing that there's still meat on the bone left, right? Knowing that there's still opportunities for this team to get better. We talk about the vertical passing game, pass protection, more explosive runs in the run game. Like, there's some things that are out there that still can be done for this offense. But I think what I've really liked about the last couple of weeks is you've muted yourself, and that's great for me because I can continue the monologue.
I was just trying to say to play their best wide receivers would be that meat on the bone. That might be
helpful. Well, and I mean, one of their best receivers will be back in a month, hopefully as well. But I'm telling you, man, I don't know. I'm feeling good about I'm feeling good about where it's heading. And like you said, I think pointing back to the Bills game and said they needed a bucket, they got a bucket, and they got it pretty comfortably. And then you go to this week and they need a bucket and they got it very comfortably. And they scored a lot of points. I mean, they put a lot of points on the board. They put 30 points on the board against a bad defense. Don't get me wrong. And it's a team that's given up a lot of points. But they did it really without the help of turnovers. There was no short fields. There was no, it wasn't
explosive plays. It wasn't like there was blown coverages that were leading to these points or anything like that. They drove the ball down the field over and over and over again. I was actually looking through this. If you go through it, the Chiefs scored points on their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possessions. Their next possession, they actually get into field goal range before penalties and a sack push them back out and make them punts. Like, their first 6 possessions, essentially, they get within or into scoring range. They then have a bad 3 and out. We can all admit that before they have to go down and score again, which they do. Like, realistically, if you don't have those 2 negative plays, they score on all but 1 possession of this game. Each one, it's done relatively comfortably. It looks even better if you go back to some of those early field goals in the first half. One of them, the Chiefs ran a third down play with the receiving options being Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson, Travis Kelce, and Noah Gray on a 3rd and 5. And that's just a rough group to go out there and ask one of those guys to get you a bucket on 3rd down, especially 3rd and goal. And shockingly, nobody got open on that play, so they have to settle for a field goal. Their next drive, they get down to the 5-yard line, and some penalties, some sacks back them up. They end up having to settle for a field goal again, but there was some potential plays to score there. So yeah, I think the offense looked good. The offense looked very good for the majority of this game. You mentioned DeAndre Hopkins earlier. I think he only had 40 yards, 30 some yards. But it felt like every time they kind of needed to start to get into a rhythm, anytime it felt like the offense was maybe starting to slide back out of sync, it was an out route to 8. It was finding him, in a timing based route. Mahomes is hitting him just as he comes out of his break. He makes a sure-handed catch, and that gets the offense going. It gets them back ahead of the sticks. He's coming up in the biggest moments, and that's kind of what the expectation for him is right now for the Chiefs. And he just keeps coming in and cashing in when those opportunities come up.
Yeah, and he's a huge piece of this, right? And he's a huge piece of this moving forward. The Chiefs have had to respond by getting somebody like a DeAndre Hopkins, and like they made the right decision. It was limited assets they had to give up, and they're just kind of managing this thing, I think, appropriately. 5 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown for DeAndre Hopkins on 6 targets. 6 targets ties him for second on the team in targets on the day. But getting him just continually involved more and more and more. And like, this wasn't a game where he had to do the heavy lifting. He didn't have to play, an exorbitant amount of snaps. And I'm sure that snap count will go up as time goes on. I'm sure that they will continue to get him involved more and more as this season goes on. But they're winning games in the process of doing all this. And I think the cool thing for me to see is like, okay, so we haven't seen the full DeAndre Hopkins experience entirely yet. Although they flashed it, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He came in and had a monster game against them. So like, it's there, and it'll continue to come. You're going to get Hollywood Brown back. You're going to get Isaiah Pacheco back. Hopefully DJ Humphries gives you better tackle play than what they've had, which I don't think is all that hard. This is a scary offense again. This is kind of starting to look like the offense, not entirely with the same pieces, but the offense the Chiefs hoped that they had walking into this season, with a complete overhaul of the receiver room, with Worthy, Nuke, Rashee Rice. Now it's Worthy, Nuke, and DeAndre Hopkins, right? So I don't know. I see the vision for it. I like where this thing's heading, and there's going to be some tougher challenges ahead, but it's hard not to feel optimistic about this thing, especially DeAndre Hopkins plays 45% of the snaps in this game. That's going to keep climbing up. Justin Watson played 65% of the snaps and led the receivers in this game. That's going to start flipping.
I love Justin Watson. I think he does a lot of the dirty work that every team needs a wide receiver that does. The problem is when that guy is leading your wide receivers in snaps, and like there's just nothing else that comes with it besides those dirty plays, like the dirty work plays. That's where it goes from appreciation to, okay, what are we doing here? And I get it. Like, he knows the system the best. He can always be on the field and do all this stuff. But like, we're kind of getting to that tipping point where when the offense struggles and those numbers hold steady, kind of like last week against the Bills, when the offense wasn't clicking for the entire game, it gets frustrating to see so much Watson running out there and stuff like that, or even as much Juju Smith-Schuster as we did, which are clearly two guys that are just like, they're not giving you the same thing that a Worthy, who had another good game as well, and Hopkins can give you. So it's just, we'll see how it continues to go. Like, I don't think they need to throw anybody out there, Hopkins for 100% of the snaps or anything, but he should be the guy, I think, eking over into the 60, 65 percentile range. And hopefully by the playoff time, he is doing that, because he is clearly one of their guys. And like you say, they need someone to go win. He's still the guy that can do it. Worthy's getting better. They're giving him more opportunities to be that guy, and he's actually looked really good on some of like these speed outcuts. His whip route's still a little leggy. It looks a lot more like McCole Hardman than it does Tyreek Hill, but he's so fast and explosive that he can still get open on it, right? He still creates space, but it's definitely like he's getting better. Mahomes' deep pass to him was one of the worst throws of the season. For as good as Mahomes played all game, that was arguably the worst deep ball he's thrown all year, because there was no reason for that one to be short. Like, there's no pressure, there's no miscommunication. He just left the ball 15, 20 yards short of where it should have been. But like, still, I think this is a great step for Worthy coming off of last week against the Bills as well.
Yeah, he's had a back-to-back really solid performances, and you got to be happy. And I know there's the what if of what happens if he doesn't, if he keeps his feet in bounds last week, but like, let's just move past that. There's some good things happening here in this week. He made a guy miss on that whip route, I believe, and extended.
He broke an arm tackle. Let's go. First time all year, but hey, that counts.
There's progress to be had there, and so like, you're seeing these guys. Like, I think, look, when it's crunch time, when it's go time, when it's time to win a championship, you're going to see a different version of Travis Kelce, and you're going to see a different version of DeAndre Hopkins when it matters the most. And that's a great jumping off point. And then you're hoping to sprinkle in some Hollywood Brown. You're hoping that Xavier Worthy continues the ascent that he has. And you're hoping Noah Gray keeps doing what he's doing. Because, my goodness, Noah Gray, he's having a nice little season. Brett Veach signs him to an extension right before the year. And you've just seen, as the season go on, his continual involvement. 4 touchdowns total in the last 2 weeks. This week leads the Chiefs in receiving, 4 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And 4 targets, just all on 4 targets. You're seeing Noah Gray continue to get better and better. It's great to see, Maddie.
No, absolutely. And like kind of like Xavier Worthy, they're starting to give Noah Gray a few more like real routes. They're asking him to go be a guy that gets open, that beats coverage, that for the most part, Noah Gray's been good, right? Throughout his entire career, but it's been a lot of we're going to leak him out late. We're going to let him be the guy that gets lost on some of these leak concepts or crossers, or they just kind of forget about him as we slip him on the back out of the backside of some play action stuff. And like realistically, the hardest part of his receiving game had been when he's finding the open spots deep downfield, the intermediate areas over the ball. That's been what he's been best at. But we've seen it the past couple weeks now. They're giving him some like real stuff. They're letting him run a few more real routes. And like that second touchdown here, where he runs kind of like the skinny post, where he does actually have to, get separation from a corner and stuff first the blitz. Like that was a fantastic route by him, using his size, using his athleticism to create that throwing lane. So I like what we're seeing out of Noah Gray. I like that as you're putting more on his plate, he's taking it. He's thriving with it, multiple touchdowns back-to-back weeks now. Hey, things are going well for somebody, for Noah Gray, when every time the ball's thrown to a tight end a white tight end, I'm hoping it's 83 and not 87 at this point in time, because I just have a little bit more faith that that's going to be a good play. Like, and not that Travis Kelce was bad in this game, but you can just clearly see his age shows up. And so like when there's time to go make a play right now, I almost feel better if the ball's going to Noah Gray, because I just kind of a little bit more faith that he's going to catch the football, a little bit more faith that if he does, he might actually make a little bit more happen after the catch. And I guess that's a good thing to have two guys that can do that and not just one. But like the way he's playing right now, keep giving him some more of those Kelce routes, some of those Kelce reps, and don't have to rely on Kelce for everything.
And that's okay. And I know it's a little weird to hear from people right now, or weird to hear right now about Travis Kelce. And it's not like, look, Travis Kelce, beloved, and I'm not trying to speak ill of him, but it's also like there's moments in these games where it's kind of hard to like deny that, like, maybe a couple years ago things look a little bit different, like the 3rd and 1 or the 2nd and 1 where they tried to throw a bubble out to him and he couldn't make anybody miss outside on the edge to try to get that yard, and the Chiefs were back into another 3rd and 1 in the red zone. And it's been a lot like, there's been moments like that, not being able to make a guy miss against the Bills, last week and stuff like that. It's, there's some things and some signs that he's slowing down a little bit. You still saw him winning in the intermediate areas of the field. But the good news for the Chiefs is that Noah Gray's winning in that area now too more. And the Chiefs need that. And that's something that's kind of been missing from this, the best versions of this offense have somebody that's able to catch a dig or a corner or, some kind of deep out or, some of those kind of plays. And, Noah Gray provides someone that can do that in conjunction with what you still have in Travis Kelce. I still believe Travis Kelce in January is going to be a lot like what you saw of Travis Kelce historically. Maybe not necessarily like 29-year-old version, but I think there's something in the tank for when these games matter the most. And I do think that you're going to see the best version of him and whatever he's got in those times. But man, look at Noah Gray deserves a ton of credit for what he's done recently. This team has needed him, and I think he's still an ascending player. And I think Brett Veach did a good job making sure to get this guy involved and get him in Kansas City as the transition away from Travis Kelce will begin to occur sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And yeah, it's not that Travis Kelce still doesn't have like a very important use for this team. I think he's still like 4th, 5th in tight end receiving yards this year. It's on a lot of volume, and what you can ask from him seems to be a little bit more limited. Like he kind of needs to be chest of the ball. It's got to be comebacks. He's got to be looking at the ball squared up for him to have like his best impact. Whereas what we've seen with Gray is the adjustments to the ball downfield or running after the catch. There's just a little bit more life there to what he has. And so whether or not that changes in the playoffs, we'll see. We know last year Kelce really turned it on in the playoffs and started moving and playing a lot better than he was during the regular season. So let Noah Gray take a lot of these reps, and stuff like that during the regular season, get to the playoffs. And if there is that other gear that Kelce has still in the tank and he flips it, then that's fine. We can revert back come playoff time. But for them in the meantime, let Noah Gray take on a little bit more. I think Josh Briscoe had a great point. Like,
no,
Kelce's on pace to, yeah, he did. I know you hate him. I don't. I think Josh is great. And so he had a point. Kelsey's going to on pace to play more percentage of the snaps than he has since like 2018 or something like that. Like over the past 3 seasons, he's on pace to play a higher percentage of the Chiefs offensive snaps than he has these past 3 years. Like that's crazy because you watch him just watch Travis Kelce get up off the ground when he gets tackled. It takes a minute, right? There's some laboring going on there. He doesn't look like a guy that wants to be or should be playing that many snaps right now, but he is. So let's let Gray eat up some more of those. And then you kind of have like this passing attack where Kelsey's obviously still involved, but you can use Hopkins. You can use Worthy as he gets better. You can use Noah Gray as he gets better. And like you can funnel a lot more of your passing attack through those 3 guys and not rely on 87 for everything and then make Mahomes just make everything else work. They're getting some more options, I think, starting to come up that are getting like just in the rhythm with the entire offense now. And I think that's really big going forward.
I really do. I know it's weird coming off the Bills loss and coming off of this game where it was, tight and it was close, but like there's so many things to be optimistic about the offense and what this offense will round into in January. Any other thoughts on the offensive side of the ball, Matthew, before we move on?
Oh yeah. We've been way too positive here. We got to get to the bad. We got to talk about this offensive line play. The Chiefs give up 5 sacks to a team that had only had 12 sacks all year. It felt like, especially in the second half, Patrick Mahomes kind of couldn't stay in the pocket. They didn't really have a lot of time to let very many plays to develop. When the pressures came, they seemed like they were coming pretty quick. It wasn't like they were just like these really long coverage sacks for the most part. Wasn't the best showing. And it was very inconvenient, I think, for Wanya Morris, that not only his pass protection was about the same as it's been all year, right? There's some good, there's some bad. It's uneven, but it's okay. I thought this was his worst game as a run blocker that we've seen for a lot of this year. He really had trouble getting up to the second level, especially against Josie Jewell, was just taking his lunch money every single time. And when you have a running back like Kareem Hunt, who is Mr. Kareem Hunt, who is good at getting what's there, but you have to make sure you give him the lane. There was a lot of plays where if Wanya Morris could just connect on his block for even half a second longer, they had a lot more yardage available that he just couldn't do it. So I thought he struggled. And then you flip it to the right-hand side, and this has been an issue for the Chiefs for a while. Any stunt that comes at Trey Smith and Jawan Taylor is a free pressure. Any single time, especially an ET stunt, especially, the end spikes into Trey Smith, it is a free pressure almost every single time. And they have not really figured out a way to how they're going to handle that at all. And I think you saw the Panthers really start to abuse that in the second half in passing situations. And teams have for years now against the Chiefs, but it's gotten really bad again this season. And they're going to have to figure that out because I think both the left tackle and then the issues that you're having with dealing with stunts on the right-hand side just made it really difficult to play offense, I think, in that second half.
Man, I think the Panthers, this is going to sound weird. I think Panthers on both sides of the ball kind of exposed some things like that gave the Chiefs, kept hitting the same thing over and over and over and over again on the Chiefs. And we'll talk about the defensive side of the ball in a second, but it felt like the Panthers just kind of unloaded the clip and said wow, we're not making the playoffs. We're going to just try to, spam you on every single thing that we know you guys have issues with, and there wasn't any. It was just hard and fast. Let's just keep doing it and see what happens. We're gonna take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
I kept scrolling past the video that I needed to hit, so that one's on me. Okay. And look, I kept scrolling past it, and it came up a little bit quicker. You throw into your break, came up a little bit quicker than I thought it was going to. Truthfully, just back here,
caught me off guard too.
Enjoying some spaghetti, drinking some seltzer, and it's creeping up quicker than maybe even the holidays or even your aunt's fruitcake recipe. And I've got something to share that's better than both of those things. If you want to look sharp for all those festive gatherings this year and maybe we'll finally win that Best Groomed at the Family Dinner award, check out the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. Trust me, it's like Rudolph for your face, guiding you to a smooth, irritation-free shave. Head on over to manscaped.com and join Head on over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trusted Manscaped by using code KC Sports for 20% off plus free shipping. I could not believe over 11 million men had gone over to manscaped.com. it choked me up. It made me stumble. Over 11 million men. That is so many people. The Chairman Pro also isn't just great for daily shaves either. It's powerful enough to tackle up to 5-day growth, making it perfect for whether you're shaving every day or just tidying up after a few days. And with up to 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge, you'll have plenty of juice to go from Santa's beard to as smooth as a snow angel. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code KCSports at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code KCSports at manscaped.com.
What was that? What was that promo code again, Zach?
That's promo code KCSports at manscaped.com.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, I can't do this as smoothly as Manscaped can leave your face here, but I do want to stay on the offensive side. I'm like Tuck. I think we got to that break real fast, a lot faster than I was kind
Snuck
of
up on me.
there.
I'll be honest. It really did sneak up on me.
Did. I thought I was throwing it to Kent for him to talk about the offensive line and pass pro, and he just kind of said, "Yep," and here's a break. So, specifically,
hey, look, I know roughly the midpoint of this show. Been doing it for a while. Saw a 3 in front of the 2 or behind the 2. It was about the time we start throwing the breaks.
That's all right.
God forbid.
I want to talk about the stunts because they are a thing that comes up a lot. And very specifically, like, why doesn't it get fixed? What's going on? I think it's also caused a little bit of extra heat to fall into Trey Smith's lap because a lot of the pressures get charged to him. If you go through, I don't know, let's say pro football, something like Focus. And they put a lot of the pressures on Trey Smith. And that's not really the case because what happens on these is there's gotta be communication, but you gotta have your tackle and your guard have to be kind of on the same level, or at least they have to understand what they're trying to do here. And what you see so often from the Chiefs is every time Jawaan Taylor gets that big jump and fires out of his stance and goes in this straight vertical set where he's practically matching the quarterback's depth immediately, that gives a lot of space to the inside. Trey Smith gets earholed all the time by defensive ends that he doesn't know is coming. He's getting no outside shoulder help from his tackle, hardly ever. So he's taking a lateral hit from a defensive end he doesn't see coming. He still has to honor where the defensive tackle might be. So he's getting caught off balance nonstop because he gets no help from his tackle. Now, I'm not saying Trey Smith's perfect on these plays or anything, but so much of it is because Jawaan Taylor's set gets him so far back and he doesn't really have a changeup. He doesn't have an off-speed pitch, so teams can really tee off on how to attack those two with their stunts. And so I don't want to put blame all on one person because I don't think that's fair all the time, but it really does seem like Jawaan Taylor's inability to have multiple pass sets in his bag make it very predictable and easy to attack the right-hand side of the Chiefs offensive line with these kinds of stunts and twists. And I think it makes Trey Smith look really bad in a lot of situations where he's falling over, getting knocked off balance. And where if you look, Jawaan Taylor in a lot of these places kind of doing nothing, but just backpedaling in space while Trey Smith's getting, absolutely run over. So it's just something to keep an eye on, figure out how they're going to fix it if they do. We're at a year and a half of this happening now, and I just don't think it's something that's going to fix easily. But I did want to talk a little bit about how the stunts happen and make sure that we don't put too much blame on the guard every single time.
And that's I don't know if completely altering, your stance and all that stuff is something that's going to happen in season, right? And so maybe that's something that they asked of Jawaan Taylor to try to work on throughout the offseason. And who knows, but it can be tricky. It's not, that's a tough in season adjustment. You don't want Jawaan Taylor in his head first off, because last year he was in his head a lot. And you saw him, struggling with some of those penalties, and it seemed like it kind of started to eat at him. So how do you manage that? Well, you don't try to make big wholesale adjustments in season. So you got to try to figure it out. And for all of Trey's wonderfulness as a football player, I don't know if lateral agility is also necessarily the greatest thing. So he's a little bit more rigid to try to take on some of that a little bit. That makes for a tricky combination that they got to work through. So we'll see if this team is able to make any adjustments to help them kind of figure some things out as the season goes on. But I don't think it's going to be some wholesale adjustment where all of a sudden, Jawaan Taylor's heel's going to hit the ground. They're going to alter his, they're going to alter his stance or anything like that. I just don't think that's happening.
So this is a good question here from David. Not even a question, but just like said, didn't know that tackles had different sets. Always thought that they did the same things to avoid having tells. And I mean, a little bit of a yes and a no, but yeah, tackles definitely are going to have different sets, and a lot of it's going to be dependent on the play. If it's a 7-step drop of a passing play, your tackle set is going to be different than if it's a 3-step drop or an instant pass. But let's just say a traditional passing play, whether you want to say 5-7 steps or anything like that. Different tackles and different schemes are going to do different stuff. Some people will quick set and they're just going to try to get hands on a defensive end immediately. Sometimes you'll come out at an angle, like a 45-degree angle to kind of widen the pocket a little bit. And other times you come out straight vertical. You can do different stuff with your hands, so on and so forth. The thing with Jawaan Taylor, it's not even just that he vertical sets every single time. It's how quickly and how fast he has a very deep vertical set. So when you watch him, not only does he get off the ball super fast, but his kick is super long. And he's immediately, 2 yards back off that first step. And nobody else is anywhere close to that. And so there's just so much space between him and Trey Smith. So whether it's altering his set entirely, like his vertical set entirely, or just mixing his sets up, those things just aren't happening. And to Kent's point, you're not really going to get that in the middle of the year. This is what he's comfortable doing. This is what he feels like allows him to block defensive ends up the arc, which is going to be like his number one priority. I just don't think it's meshing super well with Trey Smith, who doesn't want to play in that much space. And what you're seeing now with it being so predictable and the Chiefs being a, pass heavy team, teams are attacking it pretty frequently. So yeah, it is something to keep an eye on. We got to see if he does anything differently or how the Chiefs try to protect it, because when the Panthers take advantage of it this bad, like with the way their pass rush has been this year, it's so worth noting going forward.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, like to your point, like to a degree, I think, they want Jawaan protecting up the arc primarily. It does, like, they do have a lot of conversations about protecting your inside shoulder, right? Andy Heck, that's like a big thing, and that does seem it can seem a little bit counterintuitive, at least to that, especially if the rest of the offensive line is prioritizing that. Like, obviously this is things that they're having conversations about, and they know way more about all this than we're trying to represent in this conversation. But I don't know, it is interesting. Hey, by the way, just so you guys know, and Tucker, have your computer fingers ready. The Solo KC raffle. Look at this man. He knew exactly where I was going. The Solo KC raffle is out and available. It's the 4th annual edition of this. It's something that we do every single year to help kids at Operation Breakthrough. You're going to help kids have a phenomenal Christmas when they otherwise maybe wouldn't. And it's Operation Breakthrough helps and takes care of a bunch of children in the KC Metro and helps supply them with things that maybe they weren't going to have at Christmas. There's a really cool store that they do every year. They call it a store, but really it's just an opportunity for people to, grab some of the basic necessities that they need, clothing, warm clothing, but also some cool stuff too that kids need, toys, athletic equipment, those kind of things. So we do a raffle every single year to try to raise money for Operation Breakthrough and the kids out there. So how do we reward you? So if you're gonna enter and you're gonna donate money, 1 ticket for $20, 5 tickets for $50, and 15 tickets for $100, those donations put you into the raffle to win all kinds of incredible prizes. A lot of signed memorabilia from Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Justin Reed, Shamari Connor, Leo Chanel, Nick Bolton, variety of different signed memorabilia there. You've got all kinds of gift cards that have been donated by a bunch of people out here in KC: Capitol Grill, 3rd Street Social, Red Door Grill, BB's Barbecue, Cookie Society gift cards. Jeff, come on, man. Holiday Bourbon Pack, all kinds of great prizes. So if you go to givebutter.com/KCSNSoul and donate there, or if you go to the KC Sports Network Venmo and donate there, you will be entered to win some prizes that we'll be trying to you'll have a chance to win. And the drawing goes through, I believe, like December 10th. That's when Only Weird Games will do the drawing. And then on December 12th, we all go out to Dick's Sporting Goods, thanks to their generous donation as well, and their participation over the last 4 years. We're going to go help a lot of kids have a great Christmas. So I hope that you all consider donating to that. It's something that's probably one of our favorite things to do here at KCSN, and I will hope you'll consider participating in that as well. Okay, we can talk about the defense now, or can we?
If we must.
I'm kind of glad that we got 34 minutes of offense in there, as always. But I appreciate that. So I guess we can start with the pass rush. We can start with the front.
With what?
Never
heard of her.
The defensive lineman on this football team against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. You were there. What you think?
I know. No, they don't. The Chiefs pass rush, especially like the 4-man pass rush, continues to really struggle. And it's really hard to like figure out, like, I guess why. And we can sit here and say, like, yeah, they don't have, outside of Chris Jones, they don't have any great like one-on-one pass rushers and stuff like that. Well, like, okay, hold on. They got Joshua Uche, and I know he doesn't play a lot, but he is a competent one-on-one pass rusher when the situation is right. And the past 2 weeks, they've had some right situations. And even if he gets a little pressure, that hasn't really come in with like game impacting plays. George Karlaftis earlier this year, especially like leading up to the Buffalo game, looked like he was really starting to come on and maybe start to chain together back-to-back good games where he looked like he was changing things as a pass rusher. Kind of been invisible as a pass rusher the past couple weeks. It's fair to say they don't have guys that win one-on-one as pass rushers. I agree with that. But also the talent across the board isn't so poor that they shouldn't get more pressure than what they do. So it's really confusing why they are unable to get so much pressure. And, Chris Jones still has 2 to 3 plays every single game where he looks like the best defensive tackle in the NFL. But like, you can miss me with the double team stuff. Best defensive linemen in the NFL are going to get double teamed and they still have to win. They still have to make plays. And Chris Jones' pressures for the past month now are not resulting really in making plays. It might disrupt some stuff and force a scramble. It might disrupt something and force maybe an incomplete pass, but they're not getting negative plays out of his pressures. They're not coming as frequently as they were to start the year. It's just, I don't know. Something seems really off with this pass rush, and the amount of times this week and last week, despite last week against the Bills, them running so much contain rush and so much mush rush, they leave a lot of escape lanes available for quarterbacks. Like, for a team that's not attacking the quarterback relentlessly with their pass rush, they let a lot of quarterbacks get out of the pocket and away from them. And it's a frustrating. It's a lot of, this is bad and this is also bad. It's kind of like, what do you do here, I guess, is the question for the pass rush.
And I think pressures are a meaningful stat and something worth monitoring. And like, I think, like Chris Jones is one of the top pass rush win rate, defensive tackles in football. But I think he also made a good point that like, not all pressures are created equal either. And if a pressure results in rush contain being lost, like how valuable is that pressure? Right. Because sometimes if you're hunting for pressure at times or hunting for sacks, like losing integrity actually makes things worse. And like, I think, we've seen some times with some rush lane integrity for this defensive line that's been very poor. And I mean, even with Chris Jones, like I think specifically with Chris Jones, like there's been some pivotal moments where like pressure is great, but like get out of your gap, buddy. Like we're making a march to the quarterback here. We're contain rushing. We're trying to keep him in the pocket, and we're gonna cross the face of the guard and leave the B gap wide open to run through. So I don't know what it is. It's been tricky, and like I think 2 weeks ago, right? You maybe not. It's more more of a contain rush is the approach, and like that's gonna change some things and how you approach it, and from a true pressure perspective. But like, what's the answer this week? And you're right, Maddie. Like, I mean, Chris Jones hasn't all of a sudden become a double teamer. Someone that's getting double teamed. Like this is his whole career. Like teams prioritize stopping Chris Jones, and like this is a $30+ million defensive tackle, and you need him to go out and do what he does. You need him to go out there and make plays because this team desperately needs him to be the guy that is wrecking games. And it doesn't feel like, maybe Chris has wrecked games the same way that we've seen in recent memory. Not that it's all on him, because please don't make it seem like this is just all entirely on Chris Jones, because the rest of this group is bad. But I think it's just magnifying the need for, the highest paid defensive tackle and the second highest paid defensive tackle in NFL history to go out and take care of business.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a fine line. Chris Jones is like an easy target because he did just get this massive contract, and he's the best player on the defense. He's the best player in this spot. This is where he's supposed to be good. And it does feel like he's not even coming up short. It's just, even Chris Jones' good plays this year seem like he's still just a fingertip away. He's still a hand length away, a half second away, or a quarter second away from the play being actively impactful, right? Like you can still get a pressure and it not have like a big impact on the play. It feels like he's gotten a lot more of those. It feels like that's the majority of what the Chiefs have are these non-impactful pressures. And that goes back to the point. How are you going to be contain rushing with your defensive ends, because Dana and Karlaftis aren't really like pressure getters. They're cleanup sack guys. So how are they contain rushing while Chris Jones is teeing off, but yet you're still allowing somebody to scramble? And it's not like I think Karlaftis and Dana are necessarily even doing bad at contain rushing. It's just the pass rush lane integrity seems to be a little off. They seem to do a bad job of collapsing the pocket. Like you watch even what the Panthers were doing or what the Bills did to the Chiefs, the pocket just shrinks and shrinks until it gets smaller. And then if somebody wins in the process, it's great. The Chiefs don't seem to do that very well. Instead, it's kind of everybody just holds their ground and waits for Chris Jones to go to work. And occasionally that pays off, but this year, more often than not, it hasn't. So they're left with just no pressure coming. Hopefully Charles Omenihu coming back helps. Hopefully as Uche plays more, that helps. Like I do know that, we got a comment in here that said that, he thinks he gets a little bit too far up the field. And like, yeah, I agree he does sometimes, but that's where you say, hey, we have a $30 million D tackle who should be coming up through the middle of the interior defensive line or offensive line. And now the quarterback has to choose, am I going to drop or am I going to step up? There's like pressures both sides. So it just doesn't seem like it all comes together very well right now. And what I think that's leading to, and this is where it gets like really rough, is that makes the Chiefs have to blitz kind of relentlessly. They have to blitz nonstop to get pressure. And I think what you're starting to see, teams aren't afraid of the the 4-man pass rush. So you're seeing teams come out with really good ideas for their hot routes. They're coming out. They have a very good idea on third down. We know we're going to get a blitz because they can't touch us with 4. We're going to have a play that gets open. We're going to have 2 or 3 built-in hot routes here. Good looks for a blitz versus cover 0 versus zone blitz. And then if the blitz doesn't come, it doesn't matter. We're still going to have 4 seconds for someone to work their way open because the pass rush isn't getting home. So I think the blitz is starting to become a little less effective because teams are just planning on it for every single passing down because the 4-man rush is doing nothing.
The Panthers definitely did. And they were, it felt like just rinse repeat every third down situation. They knew exactly what they were going to do. We'll get to like some of that coverage here in a second, but they hope you're getting Charles Omenihu back, and like Charles Omenihu had a good year last year. Like he was looking good and he came on strong late in the season. Like he had a good AFC Championship game before he got hurt too. I think he had a sack strip, right? Or forced fumble or something like that. So like, he was doing some good things, and like you're hoping he's back, and like that can be an impact player. But it's not going to just be him. It's got to be Joshua Uche kind of finding his footing, and the Chiefs figuring out how to utilize Joshua Uche and this pass rush figuring out how to play with Joshua Uche. It's George Karlaftis playing consistently over, over the course of the home stretch too. So like this whole thing has to come together. That whole defensive line has to come together because they can't just do what they did. Because the back end of the defense. Are we okay moving on, Maddie? Maddie, is that fine?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's talk about this. Sorry. One more little thing here. How do you fix it? That's what I want to know. How do you fix this from here? Like, what is the answer to fix this? And this is what I come back to. Because the Chiefs do blitz so much, it gets a little complicated, but they don't stunt a lot. This isn't a team. The Chiefs have never been a heavy utilization of stunts, twists, or anything like that. But at the rate this is going right now, where they are struggling to hold their contain lane, where they are struggling to get this one-on-one pressure, you're not doing anything well. Might as well start throwing some more games in there. Make it a little bit more complex for offensive lines to figure out what's going on. And like the big reason you don't want to stunt or twist a ton is because it does throw off pass rush lane integrity. That's like the big knock against it. But if you're already losing it, why not try to throw with more stunts? Why not try to get a little bit more gamey up front and see if you can't scheme open without blitzing these extra pressures, because they just aren't coming frequently enough behind it. There's obviously the other issue that we're about to get to of coverage plays a role in some of this stuff too. But like, do you have any thoughts on what they could do to fix it besides, maybe trying to run a few more games up front?
I think it's games. And I think it's like, I don't know if it's like playing Turk Wharton too much or what, but like, do you try to kick some more defensive ends inside? Because it doesn't feel like we've seen Dana kicking inside as much as we have recently. And like, he's a guy that plays those games very well. And it's like to utilize him more in these third downs, kicking him inside a little bit more, letting him run some games, getting to some more of those three DN looks around Chris Jones. Like maybe it's time for that. Like Turk Wharton, I feel like he's kind of, like he had a really strong start to the season, and like he's kind of started to tail off a little bit with some of the pressures that he's created. He's just not as consistent. I mean, he was playing out of his mind early in the year, but it's like you're missing out on that a little bit. I don't know. Maybe it's just moving some guys around a little bit more as the season goes on, moving those defensive ends inside a little bit more. And maybe that comes when Charles Omenihu comes back a little bit too, because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I get a little flummoxed, man. I get a little flummoxed with this because, like, I watched the Chiefs pass rush last year, and like I can't tell you what the difference was. I know Charles Omenihu for a stretch matters, but like I can't tell you what the significant difference was. While last year they were able,
so they had
Turk's
to kick.
Good.
I know, but they had to kick the defensive ends inside a lot more on third down.
Yeah, but like I like Turk inside.
I know. I'm just saying, but maybe they don't feel as comfortable running the games and stuff because they think Turk's going to go in.
Maybe. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I get it. No, I get it. I also think, and this is where I always get in trouble with the Chris Jones thing, is I think Chris Jones is great. Like, obviously, he is really difficult to hold rush lane integrity with while you have Chris Jones on your team. He is very much a guy that's going to take, not the easiest, but he is going to take a path to the quarterback that is going to be the most likely for him to win. And that leads him to run not only out of where his gap should be sometimes, but it also takes him way out of his gap sometimes. Like, you see him win sometimes and he goes way out of his B gap or way out of the C gap that he's in. And that's not bad if you complete the play, but if you don't complete the play, that puts a lot of other guys in a really bad spot. And it kind of feels like that's happening more and more this year without a secondary passer. Now, this would be not an issue if there was a secondary pass rusher doing anything. So I want to be very clear. It's not all on him, but when he takes these very long, convoluted paths that leave, a gap and a half wide open, somebody else has to step in and cover that, which means now they can't be rushing the passer because they have to kind of overlap with what he's doing. And so I do think he's a little tricky to rush with as like a teammate, especially when you don't have anybody else that's winning one-on-ones. If you could win one-on-ones and just let both guys pin their ears back, okay. But when that doesn't happen, so yeah, maybe getting a little bit more athletic guy inside, like another defensive end on the inside, like a Dana or a Karlaftis could help overlap his, wherever he's going a little bit better. Maybe getting that little bit of extra speed matters. I'm not sure. It's just they need some kind of fix going forward because I don't think they can keep going at this rate with the pass rush. And it's like I said, once it starts impacting the blitz this much, that's where I start to get real concerned.
Yeah. It's I don't know. But again, what's the difference between last year? Like, I don't think Chris is less gap disciplined than last year.
No. I don't know. He was after that paycheck last year.
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point.
That made him less gap disciplined. We all remember that Chargers game.
Yes, we do. I don't know. And like, I think it's like, there's a line here to draw. Cause like, I don't think it's like, hey, look, Chris Jones is the best defensive player on this team. And the ship's been built out of Chris Jones, the $30 million defensive tackle. And it's not entirely his fault. It's just like, with much as given.
Do you think is it just coverage sacks? I mean, do we think that's the difference between this year and last year? Like why the pass rush seems to be a little bit better? Do we think last year was just a lot more coverage stacks? I'm just I'm looking through some numbers right now. So like you can answer that while I contemplate.
I'm not sure. I don't know. There's definitely some of that for sure. And like, maybe it was just like as simple as, the coverage was so good and like it all just worked well together and the chemistry was right and the timing was right and it was a little bit of everything and everything was working together. And when they lost L'Jarius Sneed, it looked like it might be rough, but then when they lost Jalen Watson, it looked even worse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So last year's sack percentage, the Chiefs led the NFL with like over 8% of their pass plays resulted in sacks, but their time to pressure, and I can't unfortunately get it split out the right way. Their time to pressure was like in the high 2.79. So like not great. This year, their time to pressure is lower at 2.59, but their sack rate's a lot worse. So it does seem like pressures may be coming a little faster for them this year. But they aren't able to complete the sacks. And some of that might be missing the sacks, but also could just be the fact that the coverage behind it's not good enough. Like last year, maybe the 4-man pass rush was the exact same as this, just quarterbacks had to hold the ball a little bit more because the coverage unit was playing better. So that extra quarter of a second to get to the quarterback was allowing them to look better,
run more games. Maybe they don't feel the coverage holds long enough for them to run games at all. And last year they felt like they could run more, like that's entirely possible too. RC champions saying that, like, way more stunts last year. Like maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can talk about the coverage then. I'm good. I'm good with the pass rush.
Good.
Man, the Chiefs have, like, I think one of the problems, like, and I think you've seen the last 3 weeks really, is like teams are spamming out routes with against the slot defenders, whether it's Justin Reed coverage from the slot or Shamari Connor. I think that's one of the big issues with those third downs and some of those big plays is you're just seeing, hey, look, the Chiefs are we're gonna have a plan for these blitzes, we're gonna have a plan for all these rushes, and we are anticipating man coverage, and we're gonna run number one on a vertical, and then number two is gonna run an out route, and we're gonna blind throw an out route to whoever is being covered by one of these safeties, defensive slot defenders here. Like that's kind of what it feels like it's been. And I feel like the Panthers just did it just ad nauseum. Like they were just like, hey, we're all these big third downs, these 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9s. Yeah, we know you're coming, Spags, but we're getting man coverage, and the outside corner is going to have his back turned on the vertical, and the out route is going to be out leveraged from the slot. And Justin Reed or Shamari Connor is going to struggle to be able to chase to the out, and we're going to make these great throws. Blind anticipation, trust throws to an out route against, zero pressure kind of feels like what the answer was. And Bryce Young, to his credit, did it in the same way, like, Josh Allen did it the week prior. So that, like, the Chiefs coverage issues, I think, what is the biggest issue right now with the Chiefs coverage? Is it the slot defenders? Is it, the thinness at outside corner? What do you think it is?
All of the above.
I know. Pick one.
No. Okay. Well, it's the combination of everything, right? Okay. So here's why it's not fair. Trent McDuffie having to play only on the boundary not only makes him not as good, right? He is not as good playing 100% of his snaps on the boundary. He is better being 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever. He just seems to be more in the flow of the game when he gets to mix it up back and forth, pick his matchups versus just be a boundary guy. So you already get worse there from that aspect. But then two, now I'm taking him out of the slot and out of being the nickel corner, out of that guy covering in the slot, and now all of a sudden, my slot corner is significantly worse because we have seen it time and time again. Shamari Connor in legitimate, straight-up man coverage especially, or even since the Chiefs play so much match coverage, he's getting matched up on guys. He really struggles with quicker, faster guys. We saw last week against Khalil Shakir, he was getting beat repeatedly over the middle of the field. This week, he's getting beat repeatedly on outbreaking routes. It's just that's not what his strong suit is going to be. So now the Chiefs are in the spot. Oh, and then Najee Johnson on the other side, he had a better game this week, but it still wasn't like he was great as a lockdown corner or anything on the outside. The Panthers just left a little bit on the field when targeting him. So all three corner spots, I would say, are playing, below what they were to start the year when you had Watson available. McDuffie was moving around and you could do all these different stuff. And so now everybody's a half step down. The Chiefs have to blitz on these passing downs or they're not going to get pressure. So that means the ball is going to be coming out quick, but it also means your corners have to cover more space. Their job inherently gets harder. It's just like this big giant, it's a circle. Everything's just relating to one another. The coverage gets worse because you have to blitz. The pass rush gets worse because the coverage is bad, and it just keeps feeding itself and causing all these issues. I think the biggest way to fix it, you don't have an answer at outside corner, right? They don't have an outside answer at corner. Joshua Williams isn't playing for a reason.
Well,
I understand go ahead.
No, you continue. Okay. Finish your thought.
Yeah, they don't have an answer at outside corner. The outside corner thing is what it is. It's going to have to be Trent McDuffie and it's going to have to be Najee Johnson together. And those are your outside corners. The only other thing they can do is mix up who's playing in the slot. That's the only thing that's left. And maybe this means more Roland Wallace again, right? Maybe this means more Roland Wallace comes in to throw out his coverage. It's not that his play was exceptional while he was in the slot, but you're going to have to go back into that because Brian Cook, Justin Reed, and Shamari Connor together, none of those guys are good slot coverage players. We've seen all three of them get beat numerous times throughout this season trying to play man coverage or get matched up on guys on the inside. So they just don't have an answer outside. The only position they can play with is that slot corner spot, I think, at this point.
I think I talked about it on the post-game show too. Like Trent not being able to move and being, relegated to the boundary is huge. And I think that's like a big piece of that. Like the versatility that you have and like goes away a little bit with that. But what is going on with Joshua Williams? Like we've seen this guy play meaningful snaps for this organization. Like tons of snaps for this organization on the AFC Championship game. He's carrying vertical with Jamar Chase and making a tip pass on a vertical, and Brian Cook's catching the ball and they're intercepting it. Like, what is happening? This team's playing two outside cornerbacks essentially: Trent McDuffie, Najee Johnson, and that's it. This is the only two designated cornerbacks that played for the Chiefs the last 2 weeks. And I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't understand. And it's tricky, right? Because like we're on the outside looking in. I think Najee Johnson played better than the week before against the worst opponent, by the way. Not saying it was good, but it was better. But what is this, man? Are they trying to get the message to somebody, or is it just simply like they don't trust him anymore? He's regressed. He's gotten worse. I don't understand. And what's
in that Bengals game you're talking about? Did one of the corners get hurt before that game?
L'Jarius Sneed got hurt in the game.
In the game, okay, because if I remember right, Joshua Williams always saw quite the downtick of snaps in the playoffs. Even though he was being used throughout the regular season, he did always see a downtick in snaps until the playoffs. And that one game really sticks out against the Bengals because that's the one time that he did play a lot. So I couldn't remember if there was. I thought there was an injury that led to it.
The point remains, like, if you're going to go play man coverage, go be big and physical and man somebody up, and then that frees things up for the rest of the secondary. And they don't even put him out there at all.
Okay, but how do if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, and I know I have to blitz every passing down, how do I maintain that level of surprise? How do I maintain the level of versatility when Joshua Williams has to play man coverage because he seems to blow a fair amount of coverage assignments? And I'll be very clear. I don't think Najee Johnson's significantly better. So I've seen people say like, hey, why not move McDuffie back inside, play Joshua Williams and Najee Johnson so you at least get McDuffie back on the inside? Like, well, we've all seen Joshua Williams, and I think this is a big part of it, seems to struggle with a lot of the communication aspects and being on the right page in some of the calls. I don't think Najee Johnson's completely clean in this regard either. And like, he doesn't have a lot of reps with this team, especially live reps, so it makes sense. But like, even if you go back to this Panthers game and you watch the first completion, I think it was the first third down where they threw at Brian Cook and he gets kind of torched. I don't think Brian Cook was anticipating having to switch that release. Najee Johnson just took the flat when Brian Cook was flying down to take it. And I'm pretty sure Cook, at least theoretically in my mind, the way it looks, he was supposed to take it. So maybe this was on Cook and not Najee Johnson at all. I'm not saying that's can't be a possibility, but Cook was not anticipating taking that route. And all of a sudden mid-route, he had to adjust and take it. And if I go back to that Bills game, it felt like there was a couple situations like that too, where safeties had to take routes late as Najee Johnson peeled off for something else. So I just think I don't think they would feel comfortable with Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams playing on the outside. You would be going back to 2 years ago where the Chiefs were playing a bunch of spot drop zone because they didn't know what they could call with all these rookie DBs. And I really don't think Spags wants to do that again. So I don't know if you can maintain the intricate play calling that Spags wants if you put any more of these guys out there. You're probably getting Connor, McDuffie, Najee Johnson, Cook, occasionally Jaden Hicks is mixed in, and Justin Reed, because they can run all their coverage calls. They can run everything that they would like to. It's just they don't run it particularly well.
So what's the answer?
You hope Johnson gets better throughout the year, and then you can start fiddling with the. This is where I think they get into an issue. Like, this corner room went from this room that we kind of like. They had a lot of depth of these people that they like, but like, clearly they don't like anybody that much outside of McDuffie, because as soon as Watson goes down, like, they've been kind of scrambling. Now we're playing a safety full time in the slot, and he is struggling with it. They don't have anybody else they want to put to step in there. They don't have anybody else they can put in there to really push Najee Johnson. We've seen Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams rotate snaps for years when one guy wasn't playing great, whenever they were rotating snaps. They haven't rotated anyone with Najee Johnson, even when he was struggling, right?
I know.
Like, they just said, nope, it's all use. Like, I don't think they have an answer. And that's why I said that I think the only position they can even start to mess with is the slot corner spot, because I just don't think you can put Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams outside together. So maybe you get more Roland Wallace coming forward. I know Spags shouted him out in a press conference last week before the Panthers game. We then didn't see him. Maybe Keith Taylor starts to factor back into this. Like, I don't know. Nick Jones is still on the practice squad. I don't know the answer. I don't think they have a good one, but like, I feel like the only thing you can adjust is start saying, okay, against passing scripts, we got to get Connor off the field. And that way there's at least only one significant weak link in the secondary to go after and not multiple.
Yeah, it's the Keith Taylor crash course is what we're about to get. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, man. It's going to be interesting. They'll figure it out. And like, I don't know. It sounds very blind to be saying stuff like they'll figure it out, but like, this is what this team does. And part of figuring it out actually might be the offense taking up a bigger workload, honestly. And that they're going to have to, I think.
Yeah, so like two last quick things. Like, I'm glad you said that, because I left this game and while they barely beat a 2-win Panthers team that I don't think is very good at all, I almost feel better about them moving forward because they've stacked a couple offensive performances together that make me think when it matters, the offense can get it done. And
yes.
I think this version of this team is going to win because the offense can get it done when they have to get it done.
Yes.
So seeing them start to click offensively makes me feel better than just relying on the defense to get a fourth down stop in a fourth and goal situation. So I like that. But also to your point of like, they're going to figure it out. This is the Spags a trajectory that we normally see, that we saw up until last year. It was always the defense was okay, kind of fun, but okay throughout the regular season. Then the last month of the year, they turned it on. And then in the playoffs, when it's all these single game plans, they kicked ass. Like, that's what the Spags game plan was last year. And to start this year, it felt like it was, the defense can carry us from September to February. Well, they did. But like, they started this year like that, and now it looks like we're getting that regression. So step back, and injuries play a part. They lose Snead. Watson's down now. So we'll have to see. So this isn't like, it's completely over. This has happened. We've seen this Spags-led defense turn it around at the right moment. It's just, it does feel a little bit different right now, because it almost feels like they're scrambling to find answers rather than playing bland on purpose. But maybe that's just because they started out hot, and now they're having to kind of refine their footing going forward.
Well, and the majority of Steve Spagnuolo's time has kind of been like that. He's talked about ground zero and building things up from scratch and starting anew every year. But I think the last couple of years, the luxury has been there's so much continuity. There's so many players just remaining on this roster that, ground zero looks a little bit different for the core of this team, because they're able to get in their bag a little bit more quickly, and because they have the horses, they have the coverage players, and they have the Rolodex of information at their disposal from the years prior. I think, and this is why, the more I've thought about it, I'm not worried really about this team. And it's because, yes, like, the offense is playing very, very well. I think there's really good signs. And I think the offense is only going to continue to get better. Knock on wood, barring injury, DJ Humphrey playing capably. The last 2 years, the last year and a half, the Chiefs have had the luxury of kind of playing complementary football, and the Chiefs offense hasn't necessarily had to just go out and just like get a bucket all the time. And instead they've managed games, and the way that they won the Super Bowl last year was, we trust our defense. We're going to protect the football. We're going to make the right decision 100% of the time. Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, and I'll be Patrick Mahomes when we need to, but I'm not going to have to like go crazy all the time and try to light the scoreboard up. I do think there's probably a small shift that occurs over the rest of the season where, Andy Reid's coached games also like he's got a great defense. And I think, he's going to put trust in this group, and he's going to show good, faith in this group. But at the same time, he's probably not going to be coaching in the moments that matter the most the same way, in the same trust in the defense that he had in 2023. And that's okay. This team has won Super Bowls doing it like that, and doing that version of it. In fact, like, that was the majority of the Mahomes era, leading from the front, defense, playing a role, but maybe not being, such a contributing, factor the same way. This last year specifically, it was the defense played a huge role in why this team was so successful. So I think when it matters most, when it's time to go win a Super Bowl, like, the mix will be correct. The decision making will reflect that. The fourth down decisions. I mean, Andy Reid, I think he went, he was aggressive on 4th and 1, but earlier in the game he wasn't. And maybe he's more aggressive the next time around in the Super Bowl because he wants, he's going to let the offense, kind of carry this thing a little bit differently. Mahomes didn't have to carry the same kind of burden last year as he has in prior years. But the good news is you have the best player in the world carrying that burden. So I feel good I think they'll figure out the right mix. I think the defense will get better. And I think the offense will continue to ascend. And they will be playing their best football in January. And they're 10-1 while we wait for all that to happen. That wasn't a bad loss last night. That was a ugly win against a bad football team, which we should all become accustomed to. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here, Manny?
No, I mean, I think it sums it up. I roped you in. You went over 60 minutes on a Monday lab. I call that a victory. So not only did the Chiefs win, we all won this week. We got Kent to go over an hour. So I think we're good.
We took the break at 23 minutes and then went 41 after that.
I mean, that was a premature break.
It was about normal. Go check the tape. That's going to do it for the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later. Donate to the raffle.
Normal
Links in the
who?
description.